every day that we get a review or a customer reaching out saying that they've tried everything and nothing worked until they tried our product, it fuels you for another day.
You're listening to What Fuels You, where we deep dive with CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business leaders to learn more about their stories and uncover nuggets of wisdom we can all use. I'm your host, Shauna Swerland, CEO of Fuel Talent, an award-winning recruiting firm based in Seattle. Today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast is Ross Goodhart. Ross is the co-founder and co-CEO of Jupiter, the first premium scalp care brand to bring luxury-level formulations to dandruff and scalp health. Before Jupiter, Ross spent over a decade in finance and private equity as a principal at Siguler Guff and a COO of Russia Partners, a billion-dollar fund in Russia and Eastern Europe. He made a sharp pivot from institutional investing to building a consumer brand from scratch, launching Jupiter in 2020 with a debut at Bergdorf Goodman and growing it to 1,100 Target stores. Jupiter has achieved 115% year-over-year sales growth and raised a $3 million seed round in 2024. Ross is rewriting the narrative around a category most people are too embarrassed to talk about. I'm really excited to tell his story. Welcome, Ross. Good to see you. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, Shauna. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to share with the world your story, your personal story, and the story of Jupiter. But before we do that, I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions. Okay, is there an app on your phone that you find yourself using all the time or that you can't part ways with or live without?
Probably our Shopify app as I consistently refresh to see how our sales are doing that day.
Oh, I'm sure. I would be like terrible at that if I could like look real time. I
Yeah,
would
I
get a
gotta
little,
get
like
better at it.
gamify it, get a little addicted.
Yes,
So fun. Is there a habit that you are trying to break?
that's a good one. That's a good question. I need to go to bed earlier. I tend to
What are you
get
doing when you're
stuck.
up? Are you watching TV like me?
I'm watching TV, I'm working, I'm looking at sales, I'm trying
Yeah.
to think about what the next day is going to be and trying to learn as much as I can about AI, so testing a bunch of stuff out.
I am the same exact way. And my son is like, he's a college athlete and he's constantly hacking his health and he's really obsessed with sleep. And I spoke to him yesterday. I was like, so you having fun? Like, how's life? He's like, it's great. I've been getting 10 hours a night. And I'm like, 10 hours? I'm like, I'm psyched if I get 5 or 6.
I have a newborn, so if I
Oh,
can get 5.5 hours, that's a big win.
yeah. Well, congrats, boy or girl?
Girl,
Oh,
yeah,
is this your
very.
first?
It's our first. She's 7 months, so maybe not a
Oh,
newborn anymore, but
that's kind of a
still,
newborn.
still feels like it.
Feels like a newborn. Yeah. Okay. What's the first thing you do when you get out of bed in the morning?
I let my dog out, go for a little walk with her, and then immediately go to feed my little girl.
Yeah. If you could be a famous athlete, what sport would you choose?
Tennis,
Oh,
for sure.
yeah, you play.
I do. I hurt myself a few years ago, and so I had to take a little time off, but I'm back at it.
Yeah. Have you transitioned at all to pickleball?
I haven't. I'm going to be
Oh
one of,
God.
I think I'm a little bit of the old school purist.
Yeah. I've transitioned completely. Now I'm all about pickleball now. That's so
Okay.
funny. Okay, so is there a city that you would want to live in that you've never lived in?
Florence.
Oh,
Florence, yeah. I mean, I've
nice.
traveled there a lot. It's just I've always had probably a little bit of an eat, pray, love dream of spending time there.
Yeah. Who wouldn't want to do that? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. All throughout Tuscany too, just like all of
Yeah, I
Italy.
mean,
Incredible.
I love Italy and would love to live there. Maybe one day.
Yeah. Well, I will say with older kids, I look back and I have no regrets really because it's like, why do that? But I do wish that when they were younger and the stakes were low as far as getting them out of school, that I had just done that, like worked for a year in another country because you can. I mean,
Mhm.
you technically can.
I
Obviously
could
the
could we
hours,
could do
but you
it.
could go do
I
that.
really should. I really wish. I don't know. Wish I took that step.
You got to do it because when you look back later, you'll be like, wait, you're so limited when they start having, school and sports and commitments. And then it's really their schedule that you're
Yeah.
wrapped around. And while you just have a young baby, like
So wait, what's
100%.
your city?
So many. I've never lived, I would like to live in Miami, to be honest.
Okay.
Are you in Los Angeles or
I'm in LA
Miami?
now, but I was in Miami for 3 years before this.
And did you like Miami?
I did. I like that. I was in New York before that for 18
Yeah, I've
years, then
lived in New
Miami for
York. I've
3.
lived in San Francisco. I've lived in Seattle. I would, for some reason, I have Miami as my like dream city because it just feels cool and I like the idea of playing pickleball.
Yeah, it's big
And
there. I mean, for me, it was great for 3 years. I had a lot of friends there. It was a nice kind of quality of life.
yeah, honestly, I would like
COVID,
to live in Los
post-COVID.
Angeles too.
Yeah.
I would like to live in LA. My two best girlfriends live there and they love it, love it. They've been there for, 30 years and I
I'll
would
be
love to
honest,
live there.
I
Okay,
miss New York though a lot.
I agree. I love it there. Okay, so final question. What are three words that your team members would use to describe you, your colleagues?
Determined, passionate, honest.
I like that. Those are good. Okay, so tell me about growing up in Hawaii. Which island did you grow up on?
So born and raised on Oahu. So my parents are from New York, from the Bronx, moved out to Hawaii a little bit before I
That
was
makes
born.
more sense because you sound like a New Yorker, and I'm like, I
Yeah,
don't get the thing.
I'm definitely in New York, New Yorker at heart. But you moved to Hawaii a few years before I was born, and I was born and raised there until I went out to college.
Are they still there?
So my parents since moved to Florida. My dad passed, but my mom is in Florida. But I still have my aunt and uncle, my cousins, all their
Oh,
kids
wow.
still in Hawaii. So it's
Did you
still,
go to
yeah,
Punahou?
I did. Amazing school to go to.
And do people mostly go back? I mean, live other places, or do people actually go back to Oahu after college?
So I think of my close friends, probably 75% are back in Hawaii, and
Oh.
the rest ended up, throughout the rest of the US.
I mean, I guess if you could live in Oahu, it would be pretty sick, but I just think of the expense. I mean, I guess it's expensive in Miami, LA, all the
Yeah.
cities we've chosen, but also like what do you do there? Like you have to be an entrepreneur, or there's not really an industry, I guess, or
Yeah, I mean, I
tourism.
think you
Like
can
what
be in
is the
there's certain corporate jobs. You can be a lawyer, you can be a doctor. I mean, it's not as extensive as it is elsewhere in terms of opportunities, and then if you want to do
Mhm.
tourism,
Yeah.
and I
But
think,
you're
and
not going like you
there's a
did,
decent
like,
kind of like finance hub, less
oh,
for Hawaii as it's on its own, but kind of the link between Asia and the US, given kind of
I see that.
time.
Yeah. Well, because I was going to say you went the whole investment banking kind of private equity route, not so common in Oahu, I'm guessing.
No,
So
not
did,
not 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 at all. But that was always something my just growing up, I had these parents from New York, heavily just very motivating, very driven, really pushed me to leave Hawaii. Because I think that
yeah,
while they loved Hawaii, they found it to be a little bit small. It was a great place to raise me, but a little small for me to kind of accomplish what they kind of
continue to
thought I could
grow and yeah.
accomplish.
Yeah. And so when you were growing up, do you have siblings and kind of who were the kind of core influences? You said your parents. Were there other people like teachers or mentors?
So I'm an only child, but I had three cousins that lived in Hawaii that were kind of 3, 9, and 10 years older than me, but were like brothers and a sister to me. So my aunt and uncle and cousins and my parents, myself, we had this kind of expanded family. We spent probably 3 to 4 nights a week together.
Oh, I love that.
My parents worked with my uncle, so we were just a really close family, and that
That's
was
amazing.
absolutely amazing because I had these older cousins that I was a young kid, but they never treated me that way, and I think that kind of
Yeah.
always like translated as I grew up. Like I was always comfortable hanging out with people who were older than me.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what were you into? Was tennis your thing back then? And what other things
It was
kind of,
soccer, tennis, anything water related, hiking, really just like a outdoor
mhm.
lifestyle.
And when you say your parents kind of wanted bigger things for you, obviously you went to college in Michigan. Were they putting these ideas in your mind, or did you have like a college counselor? Like, how did you target which schools to apply to?
Ultimately, I wanted to go somewhere that I could be a little bit anonymous and start fresh, or at least explore who I could become. And a lot of people in Hawaii ended up in a lot of the UC schools, and then someone, to the East Coast. But I wanted to go somewhere where I could just meet new people and kind of start fresh in a bit. So they didn't really force me into any one school. I think they certainly motivated me to work hard to get into some good schools. But my dad and I went on a college trip one year and bounced around to a bunch of big universities, I mean, UT Texas, UCLA, UNC and Michigan. And I think my dad and I just walked across the Michigan campus, both looked at each other and was like, this is it.
Yeah. I'm very drawn to that school. And I feel like I've never met anybody, again, like Punahou, I've never met anybody who went to Michigan who didn't love it. And I've got two kids in college, one that's in the process of looking in college, and I'm encouraging her to look at Michigan, although she wants sunshine.
Does not have sunshine.
Not does not have sunshine.
That's for sure, but it's just an awesome school.
Yeah. And when you decided to get your business degree, were you clear on kind of what your vision was, what you thought you wanted to kind of be when you grew up, or were you just kind of letting it
I
happen
don't know why,
organically?
but I did. I was in the business undergrad business school at Michigan, and a lot of people there were really focused on like being in banking, being in consulting, and so I just, for whatever reason, immediately knew I'm going to be a banker. I don't even think I even knew what that meant, but but I
I
just
love Excel.
yeah, but I just want to do it. And I also took some entrepreneurial courses. So I always knew that one day I wanted to do something on my own, create something. But I just kind of felt that it was a bit of like a trial by fire. Like if I could do it in banking, I could kind of do anything. And I found that to be totally true. I think I worked really, really hard in my career. In a lot of ways, it wasn't even exactly the work that I did as much as just I learned that you got to work hard, you got to hustle. I mean, I was working, in the middle of the night, I was changing toner ink in a printer. So it's not that I necessarily going to use that in the future, but it made me appreciate also like all the aspects of business and recognizing that like someone has to do all these things. Now it's changed since then, but definitely gave me like a very strong work ethic that both Robbie and I kind of try to bring to Jupiter. And I'll be honest, it's sometimes hard to translate that to people who haven't experienced that kind of job experience because it is
Yeah.
so extreme.
Well, and it's generational sometimes, like some of the people who are in their 20s. I don't know if it's just a stigma, but I do find it to be the case where it's sometimes like, hey, I've got to worry about work-life balance and my mental health is like their number one kind of driver. And secondarily is like outworking other people. And at least when I was raised, it was a little bit like, you get out what you put in.
That's
And
my dad. I mean, he was a great mentor to me, and his saying that he told me from when I was a little kid was work hard now, play later. And it always stuck with me. So when I started working in banking, he kind of repeated it. And when I told him like this is tough, I don't know, I can do this. It's like just it's gonna pay off. And then when I had moments where it did pay off, it's like I told you.
yeah,
I told you it would work, it
yeah.
would pay off. So that's just my mentality now.
What made you pivot and make the change from investment banking to private equity? I know that it was that company, Siguler Guff, was focused on consumer and tech, but like, how did you even know where to look and what pulled you in that regard, as opposed to just like staying in investment banking?
Yeah, so I think so there were actually two drivers. One was my dad was ill or became ill while I was in banking, and it was it made it really limiting for me to be able to be there and see him. So partially I needed to find another opportunity. And although the firm was actually quite understanding, I needed to be able to spend time with him while he was ill. So partially was looking for something that gave me a little bit more flexibility. Now ultimately that next job gave me the flexibility in the beginning and then ultimately kind of became similar in ways of, the kind of hours and commitment, but that was one part of it. But more than anything, I think I've always wanted to own something, be really responsible for something's success. And I always found that PE is a bit different than banking in that banking, you can advise a company on what they should do. And if it works or it doesn't work, you get paid. Private equity is it's just a different, it's a different mindset. You do things for the long term. Certainly you want a positive outcome and you really care about the outcome. So you really do whatever you can even after you make the investment to ensure the company's success. So it's just a
Hmm.
different level of kind of responsibility and accountability. And I
Yeah.
think as I then later got into entrepreneurship, it was like greater accountability. I wanted to know that like I was responsible for my success.
Yeah. And tell me about Russia partners. I know that in that case of that business and that kind of part of your career, you were investing across Russia and Eastern Europe. Did you have to travel a ton and did you go to Russia?
Yeah, I was there. That wasn't necessarily like a business or a geography that I had been targeting or knew I wanted to work in, but the firm that I had joined had a business that was actually the oldest private equity firm in Russia. I mean, so it was a subsidiary of Siguler Guff. They had kind of been restarting or expanding the business as capital was starting to flow back into Russia. And so just ended up being just interesting to me. So I kept working on it. At the time, I was really the only junior person at the firm. There were a number of managing directors, and I was the junior person working kind of everything. But it ended up just being the most interesting to me. So over time, I just expressed my interest. This is really what I want to focus on. And I started to build a relationship with our team over in Russia so once I started building that relationship, it was natural. So I probably traveled there 10 times a year for
Oh, geez.
for many years,
That's
and really
insane.
built a kind of strong relationship with our team there. And it was an incredible opportunity, something so different than what I ever would have expected I would have done. But it also like really honed my skills because it's a hard place to do business, and you have to be very careful and skeptical about everything you do. And I think I bring that level of skepticism, and I'm just highly careful in everything that I do
Yeah.
I know you have to it was needed to be successful there. A lot of it at the beginning it was definitely a relationship building exercise. And I think to be honest, it was a bit challenging in that I was relatively young in my role. So I came in some ways, people on the team there kind of question like, who is this guy and why does he have
Who's the young kid? Yeah.
any right to tell me, or to guide me as to what I should be doing? And I think the success came from just proving to them like why I deserve to be there. I grinded. I was
Yeah.
there till, the lights went out, and I was there before anyone got there. And, I did everything I can to learn the culture as best I could. And then I think there were a couple investment successes that I had accomplished that made the team believe in
Yeah.
me.
Kind of
It
validated
validated
you
me,
and gave you
and
some.
then so from that when that happened, my mentor at Siguler Guff, Drew Guff, who I worked very closely with, he was very good about praising me in front of the team when I had accomplished these, goals, and
Yeah.
that built like more and more credibility. So then he could kind of step away and didn't have to worry about it, and he knew that they trusted me, they respected me, and I could then kind of accomplish what ultimately he wanted, the
Yeah. Well, I mean,
firm.
most people who are working in institutional alternative asset in any way seem to be very successful, and it's got obviously monetary gains and can be a really incredibly lucrative career. What made you decide, I guess, what was your internal conversation with yourself when you're thinking, I'm going to kind of pivot my career and go into, you start working in consumer in a data-driven kind of e-commerce environment, completely different.
Yeah, I mean, I
Is
think
it Rohego Holdings? Is that how you say
Rohigo.
it?
So it's
Rohigo.
it's Ross Henri is my middle name. Goodhart. So
Oh,
it's Rohego.
oh, Rohigo. Okay, so
Rohigo.
it's like, what was the idea of that? What was your internal dialogue there?
So, yeah, so I think, private equity can be lucrative, but it's not always lucrative. And I think it was a
I
long
always think
time.
of people in private equity as just crushing it.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, and it just I think certainly many people do, but it can take a long time. You don't immediately make a lot of money. And I think what I had kind of recognized in that model is that certainly it can be lucrative, but it takes a long time, and it's a long game, right? These are funds are 10-year, 12-year funds, and by the time they actually start to pay people good money, it can be you have to really be there for a long time. And I think that was just something that I started recognizing that was also very heavily kind of dependent on everyone else's work. And so I think I had always just wanted to do something where I knew that like I was solely or very much a meaningful contributor to the success. And so it was really a side hustle. It really was born out of I sat on the board of a company that we invested in in the Russia business that ultimately ended up being wildly, wildly successful. We took the company public on the New York Stock Exchange and ended up being a great investment for the fund. But I remember as a board member, I was tasked with giving guidance to the founders and executive team on how to run their business. And arguably, they were incredibly smart, incredibly talented. They knew their business so much better than I ever would. I think I was helpful in that I gave a different perspective from an investor's point of view, but I was never going to be able to understand the complexities of the business like they did. And that's really what just forced me as a bit of a side hustle while I was still in private equity to start Rohigo. And that was just, I wanted to do something where I was responsible. I got a lot closer to the consumer. I wasn't at this kind of like 40,000 foot view of giving guidance on what they should do with their business, but I was actually running my own business, having to deal with employees, good and
Having
bad.
more operating role.
Exactly. And I wanted to have that operating role. And so I did that as a side hustle at first, and then it just started to catch on.
Yeah. And what kind of brands were you working with?
So the first brand I launched was in the specialty kitchen tool space. So it was not that I have any expertise in cooking, but I just used a lot of data. I love data, and I did a bunch of data analysis that showed a good opportunity in some of these specialty kitchen tool products. My friends always tease me because I was the number one seller of whipped cream dispensers on Amazon and creme brulee torches and a lot of these kind of random products that you just think are small, but when you actually look at the market size of products, they're pretty large. And so it caught on. My parents bought my first product was a pizza cutter and spatula in one. I just improved what was already out there. They bought it and it's like, oh, this is cool. I sold the product, granted it was to family. And then some person I didn't know in North Dakota bought one. And then it just started to move. And I said, there's something here. I had been working in private equity for 12 and a half years. Felt like it was my time to do something on my own. They were very supportive of me following my own passion, always supportive of me coming back if it didn't work. But something in my head always told me like that was never going to be an option. Like I didn't want to give myself that fallback.
Give yourself an out. Yeah.
Yeah. And so ultimately launched a bunch of kitchen tools, later launched a few home accessories, and then I actually acquired a brand, a magnifying glass brand, seemingly, small opportunity, but not big market, hobbyists, elderly. And so built up that brand and ultimately sold off kind of a series of these brands to one of the big Amazon aggregators in 21.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so, part of my like interest in even starting the podcast is I love the origin story of businesses and just people's personal stories. And I'm curious about your personal story around Jupiter. I know when we spoke on the phone, you were talking about like your own struggle with like scalp health and kind of like something that you were trying to find the answers to. But there's a difference between like, oh, hey, this is like driving me crazy and this is a problem. And like, I'm a private equity, like operating high level investment banking kind of. Now I'm going to go into this whole new industry that I've never been in. Tell me about the idea. Was it your idea?
So it's actually a great kind of origin story. So as I mentioned, I had my other business that was performing well, and I was about thinking about kind of selling it. It was all data driven. It was not personal. I've always wanted to do something that was personal to me, as well as leverage data to drive the opportunity. And I've been a lifelong dandruff sufferer. I was frustrated with the products that were out there. I knew there had to be something better from a kind of both a branding and formulation perspective. And so I started to look into the opportunity and identified that there was a big unmet need for something elevated. Robbie, my business partner, independently of me, had I'd say his aha moment where he identified the opportunity as well. And so simultaneously at the same time, we had both identified the opportunity. He called me up one day. We had been introduced a year prior by a mutual friend, now an investor of ours, who said, you guys should talk. You guys, I think, just have a lot of complementary skill sets. And so Robbie reached out to me saying, let's get together. I've got this idea. I think I want to do something in the dandruff space. What are your thoughts?" And I smirked and laughed at him. He wondered why. And I said, "Because I've been looking into that as well."
That's so crazy. I mean, of all industries, and two dudes on top of
So
it.
it was, but I
Like,
mean, again, it started out with two dudes, two guys trying to solve a problem for ourselves. But then when we started to do more research and started to talk to our network, our families, our friends, we realized that women were being excluded from the conversation. We launched a fake brand to test this out before raising any money. We self-funded it to see what,
yeah,
who'd
test
be
the
interested in
market.
this. Yeah, who'd be interested in a product, in a kind of more elevated, clean version of dandruff care. And
And
it
so
ended
what did
up,
you do when you say test the market? Did you go on to social media and make like a
yeah, we actually
fake
created a fake brand. We
post?
created a fake brand
I
of
like the
what,
name of the fake brand. Wasn't it Headway?
yeah. So Headway was our fake brand. And we created a website, launched some ads, and just started to, more than anything, engage with customers on what is it you want in a product? What's missing?
And what did they say?
They wanted products that were safe for coloring chemically treated hair. They wanted cleaner products, vegan, no dyes, really just like a cleaner version that was also more elevated and had a more kind of elevated scent profile that they would feel confident about having in their shower. And it also proved out that, although we had initially launched the concept as a unisex brand, 75% of the participants in this fake brand test ended up being women. And it's proven out over the life of Jupiter that that's actually very closely mimicked our actual, our consumer base, even more so, probably 80% female. So
Yeah,
I think
I
once we
can see
saw that
that.
there being the real opportunity, we said, okay, there's something there, and this is a unique angle for us. We still want to make products that work for us, but we see a big, big space for us here.
Yeah. And when you're thinking about, in my mind, growing up, I didn't have dandruff, and so I've never used any of those brands. I'm sure at some point I will have it, or maybe I've had it and nobody told me. I have no idea. But
Mhm.
I always thought of, I'm probably your target audience in some way, in the way that I love kind of bougie products. I like them to feel good, smell good. I like the bottles to be pretty. I like it to be kind of high end, especially with my hair. And when I think of like a Head and Shoulders, I think of just cheap, plasticky kind of, I don't have an association with it of something I'd be proud to show in my shower. But I also have the idea that the stigma of the word dandruff is like a thing. And so how do you do you just tackle that head on, or do you kind of try to mask it as like scalp health that really helps your hair not get dry?
Yeah, so there's been zero innovation in the space for 60 years. It's been dominated by Head and Shoulders and a few others, and they've played in the mass market, and there's been no brand that has been focused on the masstige or prestige or mass aspirational space for the consumer like yourself that is looking for a more elevated product. And so
Hmm.
while those products that have been out there can work, I mean, they they've been around for a long time for a reason. They do work. They're often, again, uninspiring. They have some bad ingredients in them. They might be good for your scalp, but they're not good for your hair.
Right.
And and especially as we think about who our consumer is, especially the female consumer, while she cares about the health of her scalp, at the end of the day, she cares, how does her hair look? Is her hair
Totally.
is her hair full? Is it shiny?
Is it frizzy?
Is it frizzy? And so we had to think through, like, how do we create a product that is ultimately solves the underlying condition, but also gives the luxurious hair feel and experience that the modern female consumer is looking for. Candidly, we've, through the life of Jupiter, have toyed with, what are we? Are we a dandruff brand? Are we a scalp care brand that happens to have dandruff products? And I think that's been a challenge, honestly. And I think what we've recognized from who our loyalist customers are dandruff customers, people who have dandruff and are looking for a more elevated solution, ones that have either tried the existing products out there and have just decided it's not for them, they need something better, Or even the bigger opportunity, women who have the condition and just don't want to admit it because they don't want to have to admit then that their only solution is a mass product. 50 to 75%
Hmm.
gets dandruff at some point in their lives. So it's not a small segment. It's like the largest niche opportunity from our this is how we think about it. It's the largest niche opportunity out there.
Interesting. How'd you come up with the name Jupiter?
We worked with a branding agency early on, and I think we wanted a brand that was strong, was a name that was known but not used yet in the space. From a kind of branding perspective, the JPT Jupiter was kind of recognizable and easy to say. There are a number of things that happened kind of along the way as we were naming the brand, learning Jupiter was the god of gods, brought order to chaos. The planet Jupiter,
Mm,
life exists on Earth because of Jupiter. Jupiter actually protects Earth because of its large size from meteorites and asteroids, like aka like space flakes.
yeah.
Now we haven't we of course as a brand we haven't leaned too heavy into the kind of space
Space area. Yeah.
space area, but there are little ways that we can lean into it. On the head of Jupiter, there's been a storm brewing for over 300 years. That storm that you see on in pictures of Jupiter. Again, storm brewing on the head of Jupiter. It's like it's relevant to us. So it's just there's like some things that we use externally and some that it's just we use internally.
Yeah. Interesting. And how did you raise money? Like how much did you, or I guess not how much, but how much did you think you had to raise? Were you going to try to do the approach of like, let's just test this? Or did you just like really go for it? I know you started the business in 2018 and it's been growing.
Yeah. We started the concept in 18. We launched in 2020, right in the heart of COVID. We started off just with Robbie and myself funding it to proof of concept and to get formulations going. And then over time, we've raised money from initially from friends and family. We dialed for dollars and we did it
Mm,
really kind of like incremental raises over time to like continue to prove out kind of each part of the
yeah.
business.
And has that gone toward like production, towards talent?
Yeah, I mean, most of the
What?
money's gone towards, of course, product development, product marketing spend, both from like an acquisition side as well as, brand marketing, building awareness, and then of course building a team, building a really top quality team.
Hmm. And how similar is the product now from what it was when you kind of launched in 2020?
The formula has been upgraded over time, and we're constantly listening to consumer feedback and making tweaks as needed. We're trying not to pivot or make changes too frequently because we do have a loyal consumer base that likes or loves our product. We try to make changes that we think are going to only enhance the product over time versus change the overall experience. But we've been improving it over time and think we're at a really good place now.
Yeah. Well, I was excited when I saw that you were in Bergdorf. Obviously, everybody loves Bergdorf, but I think of them as like the ultimate kind of high-end store. And then you also launched in Target. How do you kind of balance the two? And how does a company like Bergdorf, do they respond to that in any way that they're like, well, wait, we don't want to be in the same store as Target? And how do you balance those two things?
Yeah, I mean, I think Bergdorf is clearly a fantastic brand. It's not in the beauty space, it's not a huge mover of product, but for us it was important because it helped validate that a dandruff product can sit in a elevated beauty aisle. And so that was really more than anything the real reason for us. It was not an expectation that that was going to make our business. We were going to sell everything through that channel. So it did. It elevated it. It gave us a bit more prestige than what people have expected for products in the dandruff space. And then from there is where we, then started thinking through like what were the appropriate retailers that we want to be a part of. Now we've been in Bergdorf for many years. We only launched in Target a year ago, and that was after years of kind of going back and forth with them. They wanted us to launch there, and we weren't ready. It took time for us to feel like we were ready, and that we had first off honed in our brand, our product to a place where we thought we'd be successful in retail because retail's not easy, and you have to have a product that you can like that you really stand behind and a brand that you really stand behind. Once you're in retail, it's a lot harder to pivot who you are because of collateral, because of just, your shelf presence. It makes it you have to be more mindful when you make decisions. We just want to always be where ultimately our consumer is.
Do you have anybody that's kind of trying to chase your tail in this whole business, like competitors that are seeing that kind of you're onto something and
Yeah, I mean, there's always competitors, and to be honest, I don't really give them much attention, only in that we believe the market's massive, and there's going to be enough opportunity for all of us. I think a lot of the higher end beauty brands or hair care brands have launched a dandruff product,
mm,
but it's just not core to who they are. So I think that's kind of like a nice add-on to what they already have. And so I think we have the trust now. We built the trust of selling high quality products for years and being
hmm
mentioned in every editorial and publication as a top dandruff product. So I think there's always going to be people that are kind of chasing us or want to or just see the opportunity like we do. I think it's okay because I think there's a need for greater conversation. Back to what you said earlier, like around the stigma, is that yes, it is stigmatized, but if 50 to 75% of the population gets it at some point in their lives, and we can educate people that it's not because you're dirty or unclean, it's that it's genetic or it's lifestyle factors that can lead to it. I think the
hmm
more the conversation, the better. And so the more that there are brands that are talking about it and educating consumers that you deserve something better and you can find a solution
yeah.
that is elevated, that's good for us.
Tell me what you mean when you say lifestyle related. Like what if I had dandruff right now and we're sitting and having a cocktail and you're my friend, are you like, hey, honey, here's the deal. Let me just give it to you straight.
Yeah, I mean, so there's the genetic factors that I mentioned. Probably 18% of people have dandruff at some point that like have more genetic driven dandruff. But all the lifestyle factors such as your diet, exercise, travel, stress, sleep, the water and environment that you are around all have an impact. So,
hmm
you drink that glass of champagne, it can lead to dandruff. Eating lots of sweets can lead to dandruff, travel, stress,
Oh,
not
I
getting
like
enough sleep.
sweets. I don't need the champagne. I do need the
I love
sweets.
sweets. I don't know what's going
I
on with
like
me, but I
candy.
absolutely love sweets now, and I need to stop. But
I
it
know. I
is,
gotta stop with that.
but yeah. So all these factors that people don't realize. You think it's just that when you see people with dandruff, you think they just don't, or I think historically you would think, oh, they just don't wash their hair enough, and that's just absolutely not the case.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't know better, you might think that, but I can understand that that's obviously not the case. So, Ross, as somebody who's like described themselves as, I don't have dandruff, but I do kind of try to take as good a care as I can of my hair and even do like a mask here and there. Is there a use case for people without dandruff to use your product and use this shampoo?
Yeah, so while the core customer, the core user of our products are dandruff sufferers, at the end of the day, we always say that the best shampoo you can use, like hands down, for scalp care is a dandruff shampoo. Because what it does is it brings your scalp into balance. It makes sure that you have the healthiest scalp possible, which leads to healthy hair. So no matter if you have dandruff or not, we ultimately believe that using a dandruff product is ultimately going to lead to your kind of shiniest, best, most full hair.
And so if you are now that you've kept like been in this business for a while and you're having this success and you're scaling this incredible business, what advice do you wish somebody had given you or that you would like to pass on for somebody who may be considering either becoming an entrepreneur or leaving a career to get into kind of consumer facing brand company? I guess just what advice do you wish that you had gotten or that you would like to pass on?
Entrepreneurship or starting a business is really, really hard. And it
Yeah.
is, and despite any success that you might see, it is continuously hard. And so I think one thing is that you have to be patient and you have to be confident in what you're doing. You hear of stories of quick wins, brands that become unicorns in a year or two and are just have this amazing viral success. And that's such a small percentage of brands.
Yeah.
The vast majority require a consistent hard work, dedication to it, and just trust that that you have like a reason, that you have a reason to exist. And I think that's something that like we knew from the beginning, that we weren't just trying to create or sell, a product that we didn't believe in. Like there's a reason to exist.
Yeah.
We've been through a lot. We launched in COVID. We started the business before there was COVID. We ended up launching in May of 2020, right in the heart of COVID. We had no idea if we could get even product to our customers. Fast forward to late last year. I don't know if you saw this, but like we had 27,000 bottles of our shampoo stolen.
Oh, no, I did not.
And it was one of these moments where we said internally, like, it's pretty awful, but like what can we do to turn this around? Like
Yeah.
how do we turn this into something like valuable for us? And I think from the operation side, we figured out, of course, how to not have that happen again. But beyond that, we turned it into a marketing campaign. And it was one of those moments of like, business is hard. And like what we could do, we can roll over or we can turn this into something great. And we did.
Yeah.
And our team pulled together a really cool shampoo heist campaign that has
Oh, I love
that's
that.
gotten some like really, really great traction. We had some like virality on TikTok from it. And we're just like having fun because at the end of the day, like if you don't have fun with this, it's gonna grind you down. So we're just trying to have fun. And I think the last lesson is just like to be patient. I mean, it kind of goes to what I was just saying, but you have to be patient. You don't win overnight. You just want to make sure that we just stay focused and build a team that's dedicated to what we believe in. And we now have a team that like we believe in, and we also let them run. We built a team around us also. I think we mentioned like this was a brand started by two guys that ultimately is selling to predominantly to women. And so we said, like, we need to make sure that our team represents our consumer. And so the majority of our team are women. The majority of the leadership team is women. And we found that to be highly, highly valuable to us because you can say all we want. We're not going to be able to understand the consumer as well as the consumer themselves.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Okay, so my final question for you is what fuels you?
That fuels me. Naysayers. There are, I'd say naysayers and people who just don't get why I started a dandruff brand. I guess I'll always have a little chip on my shoulder that I want to prove that you can build a well-recognized, elevated dandruff brand and do something that, is gonna like change the market. And I just
Yeah.
we believe in it, and then I will say every day that we get a review or a customer reaching out saying that they've tried everything and nothing worked until they tried our product, it fuels you for another day.
Thank you for listening to the What Fuels You podcast. If you'd like to check out past episodes to hear from more business leaders, go to fueltalent.com/podcast. And if you have a minute, please leave a review and rating on your favorite podcast app, or share this episode with a friend or colleague. Please share any feedback or interview suggestions for other guests by sending a message to podcast@fueltalent.com. I'm Shauna Swerland, and thanks again for listening.